Judith Francisca Baca, born September 20th, 1946. Let me make sure the camera's recording. And it is. Hold on, let me make sure the angle. Just I can fix it. She's an American artist, activist, and professor of Chicano studies, world arts, and cultures, based at the University of California, Los Angeles. She is the co-founder and artistic director of the Social and Public Art Resource Center in Venice, California. Baca is director of the mural project that created the Great Wall of LA, which is the largest communal mural project in the world. Damn. Early life. Baca was born in LA on September 20th, 1946 to Mexican-American parents. She was raised in Watts, Los Angeles, which is predominantly Black and Latino area. She lived in an all-female household composed of her mother, her aunts Rita, Delia, and her grandmother Francisca. Her military father never knew of her existence and moved back to the East Coast after her birth. Her grandmother was an herbal healer and practiced curanderismo, which profoundly influenced her sense of indigenous Chicano culture. Baca's mother later married Clarence Ferrari in 1952, and Baca has a half-brother, Gary, and a half-sister, Diane. Afterward, the three of them moved to Pacoima, Los Angeles. The neighborhood was drastically different from Watts. Mexican Americans were minorities in Pacoima. Education. Baca was not allowed to speak Spanish in elementary school. It was prohibited. But she did not know English very well. Her teacher would tell her to go paint in the corner while the other children studied. After some time, Baca started getting better in classes when she was able to understand the textbooks. With the encouragement of her art teacher, she began drawing and painting. She later graduated from Bishop Alemany High School in 1964. She then attended California State University, Northridge, Sun, and earned her bachelor's degree in 1969 and a master's degree in fine art in 1979. Judy was the first Baca to attend college and actually quit for a brief period of time after becoming tired of being poor. She sought out a job in production illustration and worked there until she was inspired to go back to college and get a bachelor's degree of fine art. While there, she learned and studied modern abstract art. She wanted to make art that was accessible beyond the constraints of the gallery and the museum. She wanted to make art for the people she loved, but she knew they couldn't go to galleries. I thought to myself, if I get to work in the galleries, who will go there? People in my family had ever been to a gallery in their lives. My neighbors never went to galleries, and it didn't make sense to me to put the art behind some guarded wall. After completing the graduate school, Baca continued her education studying muralism at Taller Siqueiros in Cuernavaca, Mexico. In the summer of 1970, Baca decided to create a mural in Boyle Heights in order to bring community together. In the first team, she had 20 members from 4 different gangs, and the group decided on the name Las Vistas Nuevas, New Views. The mural they would create would show images that would be familiar to Mexican Americans who were living in the neighborhood. I want to use public space to create a public voice for and a public consciousness about people who are, in fact, the majority of the population, but who are not represented in any visual way. Raspados Mojados. In the Raspados Mojados, Baca used a street vendor cart as a sculptural installation to address immigration issues and misrepresentations of Mexicans living in the United States. Los Angeles street vendors constantly sell ice cream as well as Mexican snacks, fruit cocktails, corn on the cob, and raspados. This has brought attention to LA and has attempted to pass push carts loitering laws into any city. At the front of the cart, a painting of a Mexican man captioned illegal alien undocumented worker, which is the main focus of the painting presented on the cart. On one side of the cart, there's a painting of a man who's being dragged across the fence, Representing the U.S.-Mexican border to the U.S., it is labeled Braquero War, or also known as the Mexican Farm Labor Program. Braquero is a Spanish term meaning manual laborer or one who works using his arms. The Braquero program started on August 4th, 1942, when many growers feared that the World War II would bring later shortages to low-paying agricultural jobs. That is when the idea of bringing Mexicans legally to help with those shortages. Mexicans signed contracts to come to the U.S. legally only to work farm jobs where needed. They were given free housing, meals at reasonable prices, insurance provided by the employer's expense, and free transportation back to Mexico at the end of their contract. They were only allowed to hire immigrants where shortages were existing, but rules were not followed. Growers benefited from hungry working Mexicans from cheap labor. Next to that painting, there is one with Mexicans at their farm jobs with paintings or tattoos on their back, as well as one with LA skyscrapers while women sweep and work. The tattoos show their heritage and backgrounds, as well as how they have been mistreated by the U.S. and what it was like crossing with many other Mexican immigrants to help support their families. Mi Abuelita. Their first project was on 3 walls of an outdoor stage in Hollenbeck Park. Mi Abuelita was a mural that depicted a Mexican-American grandmother with her arms stretched out as to give a hug. This work recognized the primary position of matriarch in Mexican families. It also marked the first step in the development of a unique collective process that employs art to mediate between rival gang members competing for public space and public identity. Local police did not like the idea of rival gang members working together, fearing it would spark gang violence. Baca also began to work on the mural without permission from the city or the manager of Hollenbeck Park, which engendered questions from her supervisor and other city officials. Despite all these troubles, Baca wanted to finish the project. She had lookouts who would signal the mural team if rival gang members were headed toward the work site or if the police were coming. One day, a city official came to the park because he had been getting complaints about the project. After seeing the progress done and team members working so well with each other, he gave Baca permission from the city to complete the mural. The city was amazed at the work I was doing, making murals with kids who scared directors out of neighborhood centers. After its completion, the community loved Mi Abuelita. Baca said everybody related to it. People bought candles to the site. For 12 years, people put flowers at the base of the grandmother image. She would complete a total of 3 murals that summer. After the murals, she was offered a job in 1970 as director of a new citywide mural program. She was in charge of creating this program from the ground up, which included choosing which murals would go, designing the murals, and supervising the mural painting teams, which would consist of teenagers who were in trouble with the police. Members of the original Las Vistas Nuevas groups were hired to help run Baca's multi-site program. They would go on to paint more than 500 murals. In this new job, she encountered her first problems with censorship. People in neighborhoods where murals were being created wanted to show all parts of life in their neighborhood, both good and bad. The city, however, did not want any controversial subjects depicted in these murals. In one case, when the city objected to a mural that showed people struggling with police, they threatened to stop funding the program if Baca did not remove it. Baca said, I really liked the idea that the work could not be owned by anyone, so therefore it wasn't going to be interesting to the rich or to the wealthy. And it didn't have to meet the caveats of art that museums would be interested in. Rather than giving in, she formed the Social and Public Art Resource Center in 1976 to continue funding the creation of murals in public. Her efforts to include community in her artistic processes make her unique to her time. Bringing youth together to create art left a lasting impression in Los Angeles. Shifting Chicano culture. The involvement of poor youth of color in Baca's artistic processes changed the way white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchal culture perceived their place in society. Perhaps even more importantly, Baca's citywide mural program strengthened community and gave people a sense of purpose. Let's see, in 1987, she began painting the World Wall, a vision of the future without fear, a painting that showed the world with no violence. She believed the first step to world peace was imagining it. She wanted artists from all over the world to help her paint it. She wanted it to be painted in panels so it could be moved around to different places. After years of planning and contributions made by artists from other countries, the painting had its debut in Finland in 1990. The idea was that when the panels traveled around the world, each host country would add their own panel to the collection. Some of the countries included Russia, Israel/Palestine, Mexico, and Canada. In 1988, Mayor of Los Angeles, Tom Bradley, commissioned her to create the Neighborhood Pride Program, a citywide project to paint murals. The project employed over 1,800 at-risk youth and has been responsible for the creation of over 105 murals throughout the city. In 1996, she created La Memoria de Nuestra Tierra, our land has memory, for the Denver International Airport. This one was personal for Baca, as her grandparents fled Mexico during the Mexican Revolution and came to La Junta, Colorado. The mural's intent was not only to tell the forgotten stories of people who, like birds or water, traveled back and forth across the land freely before there was a line that distinguished which side you were from, but to speak to our shared human condition as temporary residents of the earth. The making of this work was an excavation of remembering their histories. It was completed in 2000. She conducted research by interviewing residents and led a workshop with the University of Southern Colorado students. She found a picture in a garage in Pueblo by Juan Espinosa, photographer and founder El Diario de la Gente, Boulder, Colorado, of an important meeting between Corky Gonzalez of the Colorado Crusade for Justice and Cesar Chavez of the United Farm Workers, and their agreement to bring the Delano grape strike to Colorado. Baca spoke at the Against the Wall, the Ruin and Renewal of LA's Murals panel held at Murano King Gallery across the street from the famous Pope of Broadway mural. In the same year, she made the Cesar Chavez Monument Arch of Dignity, Equality, and Justice. It is located at San Jose State University. It has a portrait of Cesar Chavez, Mahatma Gandhi, and Dolores Huerta, which we've talked about. She's the one that did the phrase, "Si se puede." Feminism and art. As a Chicana woman, let me double check on the camera real quick. All right, let's take a break. We'll just be safe. All right, let's get back at it. Pardon me. Perdóname. As a Chicana woman, she wanted to empower the women of color and bring community together in LA. Baca did so by illuminating the beauty and power and rich Chicana culture through public art. The processes behind the images that Baca created are equally powerful. Baca's premise in her artistic process was to involve disempowered youth in order to evoke a sense of community and enable growth. In some ways, these acts cause Baca's art to be feminist. On the other hand, identity is personal, and only Baca has the agency to identify herself, and her art is feminist. After divorcing her husband and moving to Venice, she becomes involved with consciousness-raising meetings. After being invited to one of the meetings by her new landlord, Baca says she began meeting other professional women for the first time in her life. Women who were doctors, lawyers, biologists, chemists, and I had never met anybody like that. I was completely amazed at the possibility of what was available for women. Though she was introduced to feminist art by Judy Chicago and inspired a few of her other works, naming Women's Space, Women's Building, and the Feminist Studio Workshop. Interesting. She also began teaching at her alma mater, Bishop Alemany High School. She taught a program known as Allied Arts, which combined many artistic disciplines and created her first mural project with those students. Baca was fired after she was involved in public protest against the Vietnam War. Baca began a professorship at University of California, Irvine in 1980 and left in 1994. The next year, she implemented the muralist training workshop to teach people the techniques she had picked up. She also served as a professor at California State University, Monterey Bay from 1994 to 1996, where she co-founded the Visual and Public Arts Institute Department. Judy Baca has been teaching at art in the UC system for just over 28 years. 15 of those have been at the UCLA Cesar E. Chavez Department of Chicano Studies. In 2002, she was joint appointed to the World's Art and Culture Development, and in 2014, she was appointed a full professor of the department. Interesting. In 1996, she moved to University of California, LA, and took on multiple roles. In 1993, she co-founded the Cesar Chavez Center for Interdisciplinary Studies at UCLA, an institution for which she serves as vice chair, In 98, she served as a master artist in residence with the role of the arts and civic dialogue at Harvard University. So all around, just badass woman in Herstory. All right, now I'm gonna try to put on a beat. Hopefully, it doesn't.